Welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Breaking news tonight, where the United Nations got the full Donald Trump treatment. A remarkable day of diplomacy, both high and low, has ended with the president's harshest warning yet for the Kremlin tyrant Vladimir Putin. In a dramatic shift, he now insists Ukraine can and should win back all of its land. And he vowed to give NATO all the bullets and bombs it needs to drive back the paper tiger Russians to the 2022 borders. It's a huge reversal from months of hints that Kyiv might have to surrender land to end the war. But before that wasn't even the only news the president was making today. Let's look at how one of the most bizarre days on the world stage has played out. Arriving at the United Nations, POTUS clearly had a few things he wanted to get off his chest, and the useless talking shop didn't know what had hit them.
And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything.
In his tirade, Trump slammed Europe's nuclear cowardice and revealed what he really thought about climate change.
They said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change, because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion.
But the president saved his biggest bashes for Britain. No longer on best behaviour, now he's had his Kodak moment with King Charles. This was Donald Trump unleashed.
Oil and gas, such as essentially closing the great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe. What a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister is listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil, North Sea, because I want to see them do well.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall for that lecture, but he wasn't done with the UK yet. A burning indictment.
And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed, so changed. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained.
You might very well be thinking, how did that fiery script even make it onto a teleprompter? Well, it didn't.
And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
The White House crying sabotage tonight on teleprompters and escalators, but you bet the haters in the audience would have rather he'd stuck to the usual platitudes. We're going to pull all that apart tonight. But first, Ukraine. Has Trump finally abandoned his overtures to Vladimir Putin, or is this just another zigzag in his foreign policy? Joining me live tonight, Tom Tugendhat, former British Security Minister and former US Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. Tugendhat, to you first. You've been watching the Ukraine war from long before it started, every move and every inch of diplomacy and every inch of those borders. This is a remarkable turnaround for a president who was saying just a few weeks ago that Ukrainian land, was on the negotiating table.
Look, I think President Trump has made it extremely clear tonight and in different ways at different points that this is about the security of Europe and the security of the United States, and he's standing up for both of them. And so I'm extremely grateful that he's made these statements. I welcome them very heartily. And what he's done is he's made the completely clear point that Russia is frankly a paper tiger, that the way in which Putin has turned Russia from a great country into, bluntly, a petrol station with a mafia attached is broken a great nation. And he's standing up for the United States interest, and he's standing up for Europe's interest, and he's standing up for British interests, and I welcome it all.
There's a big song and dance a few months ago, well, less than that, 6 weeks ago, when he met with Putin in Alaska. Is this a tacit admission, Mr. Tugendhat, that the president's got this wrong? Russia was thumbing his nose at his attempts to broker peace. The mythical meeting with Zelensky has never happened, and the war has rolled on. Is this a reversal, or from a position of strength or a position of weakness?
Look, I respect anybody who tries to bring peace to any area of the world. And what the president of the United States has done is he's tried to bring peace. And he's realized what many of us have also realized, which is that Putin's simply not interested. What he wants to do is to export violence in order to secure his own regime. Now, President Trump has realized that, and what he's doing now is he's making sure that that export of violence doesn't kill any more Ukrainians. Now, I welcome that. I mean, I think he's doing exactly the right thing. We've got to stop this export of violence, and we've got to make sure that we stand up for those who are being murdered by Russians every single day, which they are even right now, sadly.
Ambassador Hsu, a welcome shift in tone from President Trump, but does it have the heft of the United States behind it?
Well, it does. It does, Harry. This is the President of the United States. He made it very clear. He was not equivocal. It is true. He's been in different places before, but this is a pretty clear statement. Not only that, NATO should shoot down airplanes, the Russian airplanes, if they come into airspace, but also that, yeah, Ukraine should take back Ukraine can win. Ukraine can win. It can take back its territory. It can stop the Russians. This is a very clear statement from the president.
Ambassador, Ukraine could win with all the resources they need. Obviously, it's an incredibly controversial domestic policy point in the United States. Trump's base, Trump was elected on a pledge to end this war and end it quickly with possibly no further taxpayer contributions from the American public. How do you think this is going to land domestically for the president? And will he have the support in Congress to allow him, in Congress and from his base, to allow him to effectively enter this war on a bigger scale?
Absolutely. I am convinced that he's got the political coverage. I'm sure you've reported, people have noticed that in the United States Senate, there's a bill that is supported by 85 senators. 85 senators. This doesn't usually happen in this country, in this Congress. But 85 senators have signed on to a bill that would put incredibly tough tariffs on essentially on Russia. It would put tariffs on those nations that buy Russian oil in an attempt to cut off the funds going to Russia so that keeps their war machine going. And just in the last 2 weeks, the Europeans have come up with a scheme, with a good idea, a clever proposal that would take advantage of that $300 billion worth of Russian central bank funds that are stuck in central bank in European banks. There's a way to get at that would not require U.S. taxpayers, not require European taxpayers, not require British taxpayers. No, it would require the Russians to pay for all those weapons.
Tom Tugendhat, you spent years in government trying to do that very, very knotty issue of freeing up Russian assets. It started with interest on billions of pounds sitting in Russian banks. It is an incredibly complicated move to do, and one also that is sort of greeted with high suspicion from anyone investing in the West that one day they may be the ones having their assets seized. Do you think realistically there's enough unity in the West, enough unity within the alliances to do that, to actually raid those assets?
Yes, I do, actually. And I don't think it's about others. It's about Russia. Let's be absolutely clear. There are no other countries that have invaded sovereign states or recognized states of the United Nations. There are absolutely no other states that have behaved in the violent and dictatorial way that Russia has. This is not anything that could be possibly paralleled with any other state of the UN or any ally or any treaty state. This is a Russian issue, and I wish it wasn't so. But the reality is Russia has invaded Ukraine and Georgia. It has threatened Estonia. It has crossed it has put planes over Poland. It has attacked in various different ways Lithuania and Latvia. This is a very sui generis. This is a Russian issue. It's nothing to do with any other country. It's to do with Russia.
A question to you both. As Mr. Tugendhat points out there, we've had drones buzzing other NATO members, other European countries. Is this the end of sort of Donald Trump, the good cop, in terms of saying, trying to talk nicey-nicey in Alaska, trying to bring people to the table? Now we're seeing bad cop. And do you think it will work, or will we just continue to see the Russians thumbing their nose at NATO, thumbing their nose at the West? Ambassador, you first, please.
Yeah, I do think that this is a shift. I think this is President Trump taking on a very hard line, and it's welcome. You're right; he hasn't always been there. He had that ill-fated meeting, probably ill-advised meeting in Alaska But then the Europeans showed up with President Zelensky and made their case. Since then, it has been very clear. And something over this last couple of days has really been clear to President Trump. And he's made these statements not just at the UN, but then afterwards about taking down Russian airplanes. So, yes, I think this is a shift that is going to be decisive.
Mr. Tugendhat, I mean, is good cop going to stick around as long as bad cop, or will we see another flip-flop, do you think?
Look, I welcome the president's position. I welcome the fact that the United States has made this position very clear. And frankly, I've always expected the United States to be on the side of right on this, because the United States has always taken the side of right. It has always defended democracy. It has always defended freedom. And today, President Trump is absolutely in keeping with the American history and the American psyche. It's defending the people who are standing on the side of freedom.
Ambassador, we all know that Donald Trump could be a tricky customer, to put it gently. And reading the runes, as I often have to do, on Truth Social of his big essay that he published less than 2 hours ago, it does seem to suggest that the president is saying, well, yes, this is up to NATO now, this is up to Europe now, we will give Europe the tools to do it. Could we actually, am I being too cynical to see perhaps him possibly stepping back from this conflict and saying, you know what, you guys sort it out. You can do it. You could do it if you had the will. Is there am I being too paranoid there?
You might be a little paranoid. You might be a little cynical there. Yes, I think a couple of things about President Trump that you've mentioned. One is he likes to win. He does not like to lose. And he has his eye on a prize. He's not going to get a prize if he walks away, if he just turns it over to the Europeans. And that's not going to win. It's going to take a combination, the alliance of the Americans and Europeans and the Brits with the Ukrainians, and that's what it's going to take to win. And I think he's figured that out.
Do you think he'll get that Nobel Peace Prize in the end? If
he gets a peace that respects if he gets the peace that goes back to 1991 borders, which he just talked about, in a just and lasting peace with Europe on the horizon for Ukraine, that is Ukraine going into the European Union and eventually NATO, I would absolutely give him the prize.
Mr. Tugendhat, look, the state of European defences, we've talked about at length in the past, but, you know, divisions, battalions, barely enough to mobilise between them. Can the Europeans really do this on their own? And how much help would they need from the United States in terms of access to, putting it bluntly, bombs, missiles, bullets, weaponry? And are they in any real state to police a peace in Ukraine, given the shoddy state of defence spending across the continent for 25 years?
Look, Harry, the Chief of the Defence Staff, now just retired, put it very clearly. He said correctly that had a snail and the Russian army crossed the border on the same day a few years ago, that snail would now be in Poland. Well, you know as well as I do that the Russian army is nowhere near Poland. They have completely failed. They are a broken force. They are a complete joke of an army. Sadly, they have a very, very powerful weapon system in their artillery, and they are murdering many, many people. But let's not pretend that the Russian army is anything in that sense to be feared. It isn't. And any NATO army could destroy it in a day. So the idea that the Europeans are somehow not capable is just not true. The Europeans are absolutely capable of taking this on. And what we need to see is Europeans, you're quite right, stepping up. We also need to see that confidence given by the United States. And that whole NATO operation is the whole point about it. Because what it is the alliance of Europeans and Americans all standing together and making sure that this vile tyranny doesn't stand. Now, you know, we know that Putin is an old man. He's a sick man. He's exporting violence because he knows that he has no power left. That's why he's put his cousins and his brothers and his nephews into places of power. He doesn't trust anybody anymore. We know that the Russian state currently is broken. We know that they are completely falling apart.
We can but hope. Gentlemen, you've both had long, distinguished diplomatic careers. I just want to focus on the rest of the day at the United Nations. I have never seen a speech like that at the UN. Look, love him or hate Donald Trump, there were a couple of truth bullets there for the international diplomatic order and the talking shop that the United Nations has so often become. Ambassador, to you first. How do you think that would have gone down in the room? You would have seen these meetings up close. You would have seen diplomacy behind the scenes. I imagine the West is slightly reeling tonight.
This was a pretty blunt speech. You're absolutely right. And as you point out, when he was there before in his first term, he was more subdued. There's nothing holding him back at this point. So he is letting it fly, did let it fly. But you're right, there were some good points. The Security Council, the UN Security Council, of course, they were not addressing today. It was a General Assembly, but the Security Council is frozen, is stymied, has been frustrated by the Russians on this war that we've just been talking about. So the UN does have problems. If they're going to deal with these problems, they're going to have to face them head on.
So there's methods to the madness you see in Trump diplomacy, 47's diplomacy, very different from 45.
Well, there were two good speeches today, actually, frankly. There was one from President Trump, which was as blunt as you stated. The second was from Radek Sikorski, the Polish foreign minister, who made it extremely clear that if Russian planes cross Polish borders again and they complain about the fact that there is now Russian wreckage on Polish soil, they will be whinging for nothing. And they'll be whinging for nothing because the Poles have warned them and warned them and warned them. And Radek Sikorski is right. Stand up for your country. Defend yourself.
One word answer from you both, please, and I'll let you go. Are we any closer to peace tonight? Yes or no? Ambassador?
Yes.
Mr. Tugendhat?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Unity in the West. We have saved the West. Thank you both for joining me. Thank you very much. Right, here to pick all that apart, my Sun colleagues, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, Ryan Saby, and The Sun's Defence Editor, Jerome Starkey. To you, Jerome, first. Quite the turnaround, as we've been discussing there with my guests. What's brought this on?
Well, I think the risk, Harry, is that Donald Trump is repeating what he's been told by the last person he spoke to. He's gone to America.
You took my thought right out of my head. That was my next question.
Well, of course, you know, he's had this fantastic state visit to the UK. He's had the opportunity to listen to the British view on this. And that is very clearly what he's been repeating. We heard from the head of Britain's MI6 last week saying that Vladimir Putin is stringing the West along. He has absolutely zero interest in peace. We also heard from Donald Trump almost simultaneously during that visit to London saying that he feels let down by Putin and the relationship hasn't worked. Now, I mean, I was slightly nervous listening to Tom and the ambassador, your previous guests, that their belief that this is a turning point perhaps reflects a triumph of hope over experience, because we've seen Donald Trump's pendulum swing wildly many times in this presidency. And I know certainly just from taking the temperature in Ukraine and among Ukrainians that I think whilst they will welcome what he said, they're going to wait very much and see what he does.
Did you detect, I put it to the ambassador there, Jerome, did you detect a slight, if I'm reading between the lines, there is a slight stepping back on this? It's like, we'll give you the equipment, but A, you're going to have to pay for it. B, this is a European and NATO issue. It did seem slightly detached. Is this Donald Trump saying, you know what, I've tried my hardest, over to you guys?
Well, we don't see consistency, and we never have seen consistency. Although I should perhaps caveat that with what we've heard from Trump before, saying that he's going to be hard, he's going to take a hard line on Putin, that he's going to run out of patience, whilst Trump has never followed through on those threats thus far. We have sort of simultaneously heard from his top officials, I think it was Marco Rubio, saying exactly that. So whilst Trump would be threatening action, Rubio would be saying, well, this is not our conflict. So that two-pronged approach, suggesting that he's fed up with Russia, but actually if his peace plan doesn't work, then indeed America's going to shrug its shoulders and walk away. And that's hardly a coherent policy to berate the aggressor, which is threatening the security of Europe and indeed the security of the world. And when your peace plan doesn't work, to give that aggressor, to give Russia effectively, or risk giving Russia what they want by walking away and abandoning your allies. It is not a coherent, it is not a consistent position. But unfortunately, that has become the norm from the Trump White House.
Ryan Saby, I mean, the state visit is well and truly over, isn't it? I mean, yes, last week we had smiling, grinning, waving Donald Trump on good behaviour, you know, the lovely speech at the palace about how close and wonderful Britain is, and here we have him once again returning to his comfort zone of slamming the United Kingdom, slamming Sadiq Khan, lecturing on North Sea oil, whether he's right or wrong. It's it's an astonishing pulpit for Britain to be berated like it's some banana republic that needs a lashing from the UN.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And you go back to that speech in the press conference in Chequers, and as you say, he was on his best behaviour. But as soon as he got back on that plane, got back on Air Force One, he was hitting out at Sadiq Khan, saying about the state banquet and the fact that Sadiq wasn't invited. And you go forward to today, he actually mentioned Sadiq Khan. Can you imagine? We were sitting there watching it, and you just can't believe that this guy, Donald Trump, is actually talking about Sadiq Khan in the UN General Assembly. It's a bit like a Donald Trump greatest hits today when he talks about Britain, all those sort of bad things that he thinks of Britain, he thinks of Sadiq Khan, he thinks of North Sea oil, and they all got a play out on that such a massive stage. And I think that's where Donald Trump, he plays those greatest hits every single time. And he said again and again during that Chequers meeting that Sir Keir Starmer should change his mind when it comes to North Sea oil, and said he reminded him for 3 days. And he's brought that out into the open today as well.
That was the line that jumped out for me as well. I know it was all like smiles and waves and pomp and circumstances last week, but what are you hearing about how it really was behind the scenes? It sounds to me pretty like it was pretty tempestuous. I mean, we know that Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump have spent some time alone. Starmer then came out immediately and sort of split with the White House on recognising Palestine. He's about to fly to India next week to see Modi when Trump has just slapped 50% tariffs because India is still buying Russian oil. That's going to be an awkward handshake while all this is going on. As you say, we talked about the wind farms and the oils. The Sharia law thing, we've discussed before, is obviously way overblown. But, for all the nice words last week, the special relationship looks a little bit testy right now, doesn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, I think so. And I think when you draw the royals into it, I think Donald Trump is on his best behaviour. It's all pleasantries. But I think you can even sense the tension during that press conference where he says that when Donald Trump said there were disagreements with Keir Starmer. And when a prime minister or a president mentions disagreements in a public forum like that, you know that it's really, really tense behind the scenes. And when you remember when Sir Keir Starmer actually stood up for Sadiq Khan at that sort of media conference up in Scotland a few months ago, and he said, Sadiq Khan is my friend. So I think on one level, they will obviously have this very, very good relationship with a special relationship, but you just feel that tension all the way through. And every time that Donald Trump talks about Sir Keir Starmer, great man, great friend, more liberal than me, you just tense, just feel there's something in the air between them.
Was that the Ryan Saby Trump impersonation? I might save mine until the end of the show. Final shot from Jerome. Look, I was discussing it. I got into there with Tom Tugendhat, former British security minister, former veteran himself. Look, if Donald Trump, as he says, says over to Britain, over to Europe, over to NATO, are the European defence capabilities anywhere near up to scratch to police not only peace in Ukraine, but potentially now defending our friends in Estonia, in Poland, and basically anyone with a border in Russia? Or is this going to require even more spending and even more American support going forward?
Well, I think Tom was pretty bullish to describe the Russian army as a joke. Russia's been humiliated in Ukraine. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But what Russia has as its advantage is its ruthlessness and its willing to sacrifice vast numbers of men and material. And, of course, the Kremlin's willingness to launch these sub-threshold attacks, these provocations, and to try and split NATO allies. And that's why we've seen these incursions into Poland. It's why we've seen the Russian MiG-31s overflying Estonian airspace and a Polish oil platform in the Baltic Sea. Could European nations respond without America? Yes. Would they be fantastically stretched? Yes. crucially, America provides a lot of the kind of underpinning, the foundations of the NATO military architecture. So, for example, whilst Britain has an expeditionary force in 16 Air Assault Brigade that it can deploy, whilst it has a formidable Navy and Air Force, when it works with allies, when it operates with NATO partners, much of the architecture, the communications, the sort of nuts and bolts that perhaps we don't see or we don't imagine when we imagine militaries going to war, a lot of that is provided by America. It's things like the satellite communications. So it depends how far Donald Trump is prepared to walk away. And Europe is scrambling to try and make itself more independent, but certainly for the time being, it would be significantly easier for Europe to play a defining role were America to support it, even if that didn't mean putting American boots on the ground. But we'd need American support.
Well, politicians being bullish and optimistic and journalists being cynical and down to earth. Long may it continue. Ryan, Jerome, thank you for joining us. After the break, buckle up, because we're asking even tougher questions. Something that people are just beginning to whisper. Are Britain and America sliding into something really quite dark? Don't go away. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Well, they said the locals were paranoid. They said protests at the Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex were just fear-mongering. Well, today a court found an asylum seeker guilty of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman after arriving on a small boat and being housed in that very hotel. Adam Brooks was loud about this a long time before it became headline news. He was calling out weak protections, lax oversights and dangers to local children. Now we have the proof with the jury's verdict. Adam's with us tonight. Adam, you've been leading, involved, organising, helped support these protests in Epping. Talk us through the last 6 weeks.
Well, look, I received a message from a family member of the young victim telling me what had gone on the day before. Now, I was horrified because I've been speaking about illegal immigration in these hotels for years. So I made my way down to Epping, having spoken to that family member, and I did a video on the alleged crime at the time.
Well, it's now been vindicated. Yes.
That video was seen by tens of millions of people. It brought Epping and the Bell Hotel into the mainstream media spotlight. Thankfully, because this needed to. This 14-year-old girl, I was with her parents today at the courtroom. The father is distraught. The family is in bits, and she is really struggling at the moment. For a 41-year-old man, and let me tell you, I was in the courtroom, he is a big, intimidating man. He was behind the glass. I can only imagine the fear that these young school children and the women in Epping felt when they see him. What happened with this young girl is it was avoidable, because these men should not be coming over from a safe country in France and being housed amongst our communities. I can tell you that women have been harassed. I have a woman that works for me in her convertible car. They tried to get in her car earlier this year. We've had people flashed on Bell Common. We've had schoolgirls followed. This is terrible what's been going on in Epping. I live 2 miles away, so these people can easily get on a bus or a tax-funded taxi to Loughton amongst my children.
And so the community in Essex, not a part of the United Kingdom. For people who are watching this internationally, we have a big audience in America and around the world. They're not the sort of people to take this sort of thing lying down. So they took to the streets.
Yeah.
Peacefully. They've been described as far right, racists, extremists. You, I presume, reject that. How did the protest start, and how did they grow? And did you feel they were being sort of infiltrated by political elements you didn't want there?
Look,
talk us through how it played out.
I predicted this after he was arrested and charged. I predicted that there would be protests locally. And within hours, there were Facebook groups, there were WhatsApp chats being set up. And I knew it was going to be big. And then on the first protest, there must have been 1,500 people, 2,000 people.
And these were
mums, these were dads, grandparents. There was loads of kids there. This was nothing far right. But what happened was a select few decided that they wanted the attention. They wanted these TikTok stories. They wanted to come down and have a pop at the police. And so maybe a couple of dozen troublemakers caused a scene that went everywhere and was able for the mainstream media a lot of the time and our politicians to label us as far right, which is the furthest from the truth.
Easy and convenient to leap on this as you know, just make this go away, call them all racist, tell them to shut up, tell them to go home.
But we're not.
And you've seen these protests start to spread across the country. Other hotels that are housing what they call asylum seekers, often economic migrants, often have a go, try hard, please let me stay, use every trick in the book, whatever. These protests have spread. Are you coordinating with other groups and families and individuals such as yourself around the country, or are we seeing something quite organic?
It's organic because, let me tell you now, I was accused of organising these protests. Not once have I organised a protest. These are normal people, Facebook groups, mums, nans, granddads, brothers that are just getting together and saying, right, it's 4 o'clock on Sunday, or it's 6 o'clock on Thursday. And then there is a Twitter group, there is an Instagram group, and they organise these protests. And look, I do share them because it is our democratic right to peacefully protest. And I don't condone any violence. I speak to the police on the protests, many of which off the record support our cause. I'm telling you that now. But I will not be labelled, and neither will these, especially the pink ladies. We've got women that are dressing in pink, and it's a powerful statement. It went around the country.
Any politicians get it. I mean, you've had Kemi Bain, not the leader of the opposition. She's been down to talk to the mums of Epping mums, I think they're called. Nigel Farage has, banged this drum. Where are the government on this? Are they engaging in any way?
No, they're calling us far right. Now, Keir Starmer is tanking in the polls, Harry. That's evidence to see. And that's because he's labelling normal people like me and the people of Epping as extremists for not wanting... He was asked himself, would you want a migrant hotel in your town? He said no. Well, why is it OK for us to have it? The crime emanating from these hotels up and down the country is huge.
What is the solution, though? Because you want to get them out of the hotels, fair enough. There's been talk about using military bases, old MOD land, former student accommodation, all of this. These people do have to go somewhere while they're being processed. We can have a debate about whether they should be here in the first place, but they're here. They're reality. Where would you put them?
Well, again, military bases or airfields away from town centres and especially away from schools. The Bell Hotel is 200 metres from a school. Let's remember, it was a schoolgirl. I've got two nieces at that school. So this is very personal to me. And that is why I'm there every week. But look, they should be on ring-fenced air bases, for me, with armed security.
No in, no out.
No, because they should not be free to walk up and down high roads near schools. We've seen this up and down the country, Harry. The crime, the sexual attacks, the rapes. We've had alleged terrorists, alleged spies.
Slipping into our borders.
The whole point, Harry, is we do not know what they've done in their past. We don't know what Hadush Kabatu has done back in Somalia. We have no idea. 1 minute he's 38, now he's 41.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
From where I sit, I'm in the UK right now, but I've been in the United States where, of late, it does look like, to quote Nigel Farage's infamous quote, there's something happening out there.
Yeah.
Mums are on the streets. Flags are going up on lampposts. Spray-painted crosses of St George's on roundabouts. For our American viewers, roundabouts there are a lot of roundabouts in the UK. In a way, there are not in the United States, but people are spraying them. What happens next? Where is this heading? You say the government's incredibly unpopular. Do you feel, from essentially the front lines of this, that people are moving away from politics in the traditional sense and taking to the streets? And are you worried about where that ends up?
No, I'm not worried, because I think it is a great awakening of this country. Suddenly people...
But that could be controlled?
Well, look, at the moment, yes, because it's your normal, everyday people that have had enough. Every street I'm driving around in Essex has got Union Jacks or St George's flags everywhere. It's actually lovely to see. And for the people that are offended by that, You know, I'm amazed that people can be offended by their own flag. In Spain, they're everywhere, their flags.
Yeah.
Why is Britain the only country that has to be ashamed of its history or ashamed of the mistakes that this country has made? It seems like, you know, there is a small rabble of left-wingers that just want to demonise anyone that's proud of their country, proud of their flag, or does not want undocumented, you know, unchecked foreign men placed upon us. No one wants that.
Adam, stay right there. We're going to bring in Owen Shroyer. He's a broadcaster and commentator in the United States. Owen, you've said that the United States is heading towards some sort of cold civil war. Just tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I might even have to push back my own opinion here, because it seems that the Civil War has gone hot, except there's only one side fighting it. We just saw Charlie Kirk in some of the most gruesome footage you're ever going to see get shot at a college campus. We also just had a man get found guilty of attempting to assassinate President Trump. All of these suspects have been aligned with left-wing values. Now, this is something we've been dealing with in this country, really, I would say, since the 90s, but it's gotten to a certain peak since Trump became president. So, you know, I might argue it was a Cold War when they were just maybe censoring us. I might argue it was just a Cold War when they were slandering us, libeling us, defaming us. Now they're attacking us. Now they're trying to have us killed. I myself have been put in prison for my speech. I myself have had false police reports filed on me in my home so that SWAT teams show up and point guns at me. I had multiple lasers on my head and chest because of a false police report. So you could argue to a certain degree that this civil war has already gone hot. The problem is there's only one side fighting it, and that is the left. Now, I'm not a violent person. I'm not a violent revolutionary. I am always in favor of trying to have cooler heads prevail or de-escalation, but we have to be real about what's going on. The left has already launched a hot war against the right in America, and it's already resulted in multiple people dead. We had an individual named James Hodgkinson try to shoot up a Republican baseball practice. I don't even know if that news made it out your way. Barely even scratched the surface here because they covered it up. So this has been a long-standing policy of violence that the American left has had against conservatives like myself.
Is it a coordinated effort to escalate things, as Donald Trump has suggested? He's moving yesterday to outlaw Antifa. At the moment, there's no evidence to directly link Charlie Kirk's assassin directly with these left-wing militant groups. He had possibly self-radicalized or radicalized in a much smaller group. No coordinated efforts. Is it really as bleak as you put it, or is there perhaps a politicization of the response from the White House to what we're seeing?
Well, I'm not buying the official story on the Charlie Kirk assassination, so let's just put that aside for now. Having said that, leftist protest groups have been rioting and burning cities to the ground, really, you could argue, extremely intensely since Michael Brown riots in 2012, where the hands up, don't shoot lie went all around Ferguson, Missouri, and it ended up not even being true, and they burned that city to the ground. It still has not recovered. That is actually where I grew up, not far from Ferguson, Missouri, in St. Louis. I witnessed that firsthand. So I do think that the radical left, the extremist left, is a serious threat. I do believe that. I think that now people on the left are realizing that they are going to have to find some space to separate themselves from these radicals, from these extremists. But the truth is they can't. They're a product of the American left. They're a product of the Democrat Party. They're a product of the American liberal progressive ideology. So they can try to separate themselves and throw their hands in the air and say, oh, we're not about violence. We didn't have anything to do with this. But they're the ones that are really the ones, in my view, causing it. When they call everybody a racist, or as your other guest was just saying, an extremist, we're not racist, we're not extremists, we're not bigots. We're just normal people that care about our family and care about our country. And we're sick of our government, our own government, doing things to destroy our homeland.
What do you, I mean, just to pull you up on a couple of those points, what do you say to those that say there's only one side on the political divide that invaded the Capitol, that, involved injuries and deaths and astonishing scenes? That wasn't the left. The right have, a track record of violence in the political arena. Is it really as one-sided as you're saying, Owen?
Yes. And I will get back to you. I'll be as quickly as possible in the January 6th thing. But let me just ask you, can you name a single other time where there was a right-wing riot in America?
Well, that's the point. We have seen scenes of prayer, scenes of weeping, scenes of religious, revival on Sunday night in Arizona, where I think I've made the point sitting in this very chair many times, we would have, in other politicised deaths, political deaths, we've seen riots, shops boarded up, restaurants smashed up. I get that completely, but it has happened in the past, right?
But yet you can't answer the question. Can you name another time?
Well, no, you got me there. But I mean, on January the 6th, though, that was a pretty prominent, that was not the left, was it?
No, it was not the left. But I will have you know, the only people that died on January 6th were Trump supporters. There were 3 Trump supporters that died that day.
And a law enforcement officer, if I'm not wrong.
No, not a single law enforcement officer died that day. That ended up being a completely fake news story. The one officer that died in the hospital days later from other medical complications. So you see, this is how fake news makes its way around the world.
Well, look, I mean, I spoke to a member of Donald Trump's cabinet not that long ago, a household name in terms of politicians, and they were saying that they think that Britain is about 15 years behind where America was. We saw the Tea Party movement. We saw the growth of MAGA. We saw Trump won. Obviously, the Tea Party and MAGA had very different ideological, sort of seeds, but the scenes of people sort of bypassing the normal political sort of channels were there and taking to protests and taking to street movements. Do you think that's something to that? Can you see the seeds of where America headed in what Adam's been telling us about in terms of people taking to the streets, raising the flags, protesting in a way that we don't really do in Britain? We're a little bit too tight, a little bit too uptight for that.
Well, I think that the birth of America in 1776 maybe gives us a little bit of a rebel spirit.
We'll let that one go eventually.
I do think that we have a little bit more of a rebel spirit here. It's in our DNA, let's say. But I think that really the angst that I don't even think it's a right-wing issue personally. I think it's a patriot thing. I think that the angst that patriots have in the West, no matter what country they're in, I think they're all on a similar time frame. Now, you could say one country is years behind the other, and maybe look into their history as far as protesting and policy is concerned. But really, I think all Western nations have their patriots that see that their countries are going in the wrong direction. They see that their countries are really being lost, I think, in many ways, culturally, politically, even economically. And so I think these are patriots standing up. For whatever reason, most of them seem to be politically on the right. Maybe that's because right-wingers have a higher IQ. I don't know.
Or they're in opposition, or have spent some time in opposition. Adam, are you looking across the Atlantic at what's happening there? Can you see are we seeing the nascent birth of a MAGA movement in the United Kingdom?
Look, I think Reform UK are playing to the MAGA movement with the big conferences and the theatre of their politics.
Are you buying it?
I am, to be fair. And obviously what Nigel said over the last couple of days, I think needed to be said. Too many people are coming to this country and gaming our housing system, our benefit system. And who's paying? It's me and you. And look, I'm not worried about me. I've got 3 children, and I'm worried about the future UK for them and their safety. If I wasn't about, I'd be petrified for my kids in that instance. What I will say is, going back to like Antifa, I've dealt with Antifa in London at protests, and they're a real nasty, horrible bunch. I went and put my microphone to them. I don't get intimidated very easily at all. I was actually laughing and smirking at them. They didn't like that. Within hours, my business received prank calls and threats. I had Google reviews and TripAdvisor reviews absolutely slating my business. They cannot take the opposing view. And that is the worrying thing from the left. They will not listen to our point of view. They need to try and shut us down because they know deep down that we're right.
Owen, final thought from you. What advice would you give any nascent MAGA movement in the United Kingdom?
Well, I just want to say I have the almost the exact same experience that was just put forth here with Antifa in America. So it sounds like these groups are probably getting their same information, their same ideology from the same source based off of what was just said. You know, it's a really delicate situation. We Westerners have been the most tolerant people on the planet. And I think that that's why we're in this position. We assumed that everybody had the same moral compass, the same principles, the same values that we did. Maybe that was naive, but our tolerance has now cost us dearly. I think it's time to not be so tolerant, quite frankly. And maybe these labels of extremist, you know, obviously I don't think it's extremist, but you know what? Maybe we embrace it. Maybe it is time to be extremist.
Wow.
I don't think defending your country, I don't think defending your children, I don't think defending your future is extremist at all. I think that's called survival. I think that that's called common sense. Now, as far as this burgeoning movement that you talk about, maybe comparing it to MAGA, I would just advise people in Europe, really pay attention to who's funding it. Really pay attention to your politicians and who's funding them. Because at the end of the day, they're going to be loyal to those people, not you. And that's the big problem that we have here. Our politicians, they're loyal to the highest bidder. And that's why no matter how many people go out in the streets and protest, whether it's 10 or 10 million, they always answer to the highest bidder, not us.
Owen, Adam, thank you for that. I'd put all of your allegations to Antifa, but there's not a hope in hell of them appearing on this show, and nor would they be invited. Right, coming up, we're going to go back to NATO, back to the UN, and remember Kamala Harris? Well, she's back, and it's as tragic as ever. Don't go away. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Now some light relief after some quite heavy debate there. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Luke Ball, a Republican strategist, president of Compass Strategies. Good evening, Luke. She's back. Kamala Harris, 107 Days, the book's called. A whiny, pretty self-justifying attempt at rewriting the disastrous campaign that we saw last year and her doomed bid for the White House. How's it landing?
Well, she's like warts. You can't get rid of her. I would pay $107 not to have this pop up on my television screen over the next couple of weeks as she's doing her book tour. But it's honestly a blame game. She goes down a list in the book, allegedly. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'm hearing that she's saying she didn't pick this person from the Democrat Party, and it was for this reason. She didn't pick this person or that person. She's like systematically going through and undermining every potential future presidential candidate that might run for office and completely delegitimizing the party, in my opinion. We really didn't need this sort of thing. The coping and the therapy session that we now get to enjoy as a whole, we don't need that right now. So I really thought that at this point, that at the time Kamala Harris is releasing her book and kind of looking back on how the Democrat Party and the primary election, which didn't happen, but the general election played out, we would have some sense of guidance and direction from the Democrats on what their game plan is. But the reason this is getting so much oxygen right now is they don't have a game plan. They don't have a leader. This is the de facto leader. I mean, there's no additional game plan for policy. There's no plan for who's going to succeed her. So now all the eyes are on her, and it's just kind of a tour of failure. So let's kind of see how it pans out and decide if the Democrat Party is going to continue down this road or find somebody else to have as their leader.
Political parties that take out sitting leaders, like they did with Joe Biden, like they did with Boris Johnson, like they did with Margaret Thatcher in the UK, take a very, very long time to come together. Look, correct me if I'm wrong, but from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like the Democrats are even on the pitch. It seems to me like they're still kind of punch drunk. They're still reeling from the explosion with their sort of fingers in their ears. Does Kamala Harris seriously think that things are so bad, though, that she's got another shot at being the candidate in 28? She's ruled out running for governor of California, but she's not denying, or she's not even debating or discussing the prospect of 28. Am I going crazy? Surely that is insane.
No, she's not turned it loose. She's ruled out her consolation prize of governor of California. I think she could have easily maybe had a little bit of an uphill battle against some primary guy in the primary election, but she could have had that lock, stock, and barrel. Then she would have won easily in the general election. She doesn't want that. So either she's going to go out there and continue this media tour in some way, or she's going to turn for another higher office. The problem is with Kamala, she just doesn't have that sort of magnitude that plays well in the airwaves. You see, when she gets nervous, she has the little cackle and the cringy laugh, and that just doesn't play well for television audience or podcast audiences, which is why I'm so entertained in one form with this book tour and so revolted on the other side of things. So maybe she does think that she has a shot, and you know what? Go for it. Run for president one more time. Where do I go and write that first check to see her go on the ballot one more time? I will also say this too. There's people within the Democrat Party that I've even praised for trying to have dialogue with folks on the right and conservatives. People like Gavin Newsom a few weeks ago started this podcast. Yeah, exactly. Started the conversation, and his own party derided him so much for it. I haven't seen much more dialogue coming out of the Gavin Newsom camp in a very long time. In fact, I've just seen mockery against the current head of the Republican Party. So if the message coming from the base of the Democrats is that dialogue with Republicans is dialogue with the enemy, don't think that's going to play very well in a nation that overwhelmingly voted for this president to be sitting in the Oval Office right now.
Let's have a little look at Kamala's media tour and her sort of attempts to explain why she chose Tampon Tim as her vice president.
To say that he couldn't be on the ticket effectively because he was gay is hard to hear.
No. That's not what I said in one of the most hotly contested elections for president of the United States against someone like Donald Trump who knows no floor. To be a black woman running for president of the United States and as a vice presidential running mate, a gay man, with the stakes being so high, it made me very sad, but I also realized it would be a real risk.
So Harris there talking about Pete Buttigieg, the potential VP selection, who is a gay man, openly gay cabinet minister in the previous administration. What's she saying there? That basically Americans are homophobic?
Equal opportunity for all and elevating minorities only when it is opportune for political expediency. That's what Kamala Harris is telling us. It's not let's go and find these people who are minorities and lift them up, or try and go and find people who are stars in the Democrat Party and present them, but rather what's my best path to victory? And if it means crawling over other people, like the message here coming out of the Democrat camp is completely hypothetical. Like, as a political strategist, I want the best candidate to win that I am working for, and I will select individuals or policies or things.
Well, that's
that
kind of
will
what she's
align with
saying,
their
though, isn't it?
constituency.
She's saying, look,
Well,
it's a matter of political capital on the ledger, and she's saying...
Exactly, but that is contradictory to what the Democrats have been telling us for decades. The Democrats' own internal messaging has been to go and find these folks and elevate them, but now she's coming out and blatantly saying, that's false. I was just trying to find the person that could win an election. That's why I'm saying general political strategy would lead you to think you go and find the best person. That's not Tim Walz. That's not him. And
arguably
so the
not
Democrats'
Kamala
own internal
Harris.
messaging... Yeah, in reality, it just was completely devolved.
As a final thought, Luke, look, Kamala Harris has backed Mendami in New York, a hard left candidate. You know, is that the direction of travel the Democrats are going in? It often happens when, parties lose, they shift to their ideological extremes. Are we about to watch the fireworks of a socialist takeover of the DNC?
Well, I guarantee you, Chuck Schumer's not going to go out there and rile up the base, and they're suddenly going to wholeheartedly fall in line behind him. So Mamdani is the future of the Democrat Party unless people start speaking out against him, because their silence is complicity right now. Like, they're 2 elections away from strapping Karl Marx to a defibrillator, waking him up and running him at the top of the ballot.
On that note,
this
I gotta
is
let you
the
go.
direction they're going.
We've got to go. That was Harry Cole Saves the West. Karl Marx on a defibrillator. We'll see that one day. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Good night.